Welcome to the season finale of Tradies Who Lead, the podcast about everyday leadership for everyday legends. I'm Ashley Baltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. In this podcast, we hear from trade leaders across various industries and job titles about how they embody leadership in their everyday roles, allowing us to learn from them and enhance our leadership skills on site. Today, we have a very special guest. In this episode, we're joined by Jim Penman, the founder and CEO of Jim's Group, the largest franchise chain in the Southern Hemisphere. What started as a one-man mowing business has grown into a network of over 5,500 franchisees across more than 50 different service divisions, and it is a brand we all know. But beyond the branding and business success, Jim is known for his unconventional leadership style, strong values, and commitment to putting people first. In this episode, we'll explore how Jim leads his company while staying personally invested in every franchisee's success, the importance of community, and the practical ways we can demonstrate leadership at every level of our careers. Thanks for joining me on the Tradies Who Lead podcast today, Jim.
Oh, good to be here.
The first question I ask all my guests is, what is leadership to you?
Inspiring people like those to put their heart and soul into what they're doing. Because people are, with the right motivation, can do extraordinary things. I'm not saying I'm a brilliant leader by any means, but that's what you try and do.
Where did your leadership journey begin?
Well, it starts from your own values. I have certain ways of looking at business that are peculiar. For example, I have always had a very emotional engagement with customer service. I've been gardening since I was 8 years old, and just the desire to look after customers well is a very big emotional driver for me. And yeah, that's never dies. I still personally engage with unhappy customers. If a customer isn't fixed up, then I will sit on and do emails until they're done. It's just it's beyond any rational consideration. And so that attitude tends to spread a lot. And the other thing, since I've been franchising, is I'm very engaged with my franchisees. I feel myself as it's my mission. It's my part of my key purpose in life is to look after them. So those values are pretty powerful. And I think I speak a lot about them and I guess lead by example to some extent. And it does tend to work. We do have fairly good attitude towards customer service, and our complaint has gone down over time, and our service to franchisees is getting better. It's not what it should be. We've got a long way to go.
Definitely, you obviously have a very clear alignment to how you lead and an alignment with your values. Now, you have over 5,600 franchisees across more than 50 divisions, which makes you the largest franchise chain in the Southern Hemisphere. What kind of mindset do you need to stay true to your values and be authentic as a leader while also looking after so many people and so many franchisees?
Well, it's much the same thing. Our franchises are very similar. It doesn't matter whether it's mowing or cleaning or dog wash or... It doesn't matter what it is. It's the same kind of thing. Most of the problems we have are the same. You know, like you've got a client needs to be looked after. You have to bring them back. You have to text if you can't get through. You have to turn up very time. You have to satisfy you. And the same thing with franchisees. We've got to help them to get enough leads, which is the first issue, if they have enough in the beginning, and then help them to increase their hourly rate so they can make a good income. We like to work on at least $70 per hour. Yes, yeah. It's very much. I mean, I give my personal... We haven't quite got 5,000 CR. We've got 5,500 franchisees currently. But I give my personal direct phone number and email address to any of them and invite them to call me anytime, daytime, evenings, weekends, public holidays, doesn't matter. So I'm very engaged, and I would have some communication with multiple franchisees every day. So I think a lot of people in their business, they deal with very few people. I tend to have, I'll deal with a lot. People that I haven't spoken to before directly, or perhaps briefly at training, just contact me about some issues. So it's that kind of ongoing involvement. In a way, it's my world. I don't have much to do with other people in business. I don't know anybody really who's in a different line of business. outside my family, but I have a lot of engagement with my own people. So it's kind of where my orientation is.
I definitely found in my experience that it took me a few years after my apprenticeship as a diesel mechanic to realize that my job was about people more than it was about fixing machines. And obviously that's something that you recognize within Jim's group, both for your customers, but also viewing your franchisees as customers. What role does that community and the value of community have within your organization?
Well, community is very important. Being in business for yourself, look, it's wonderful. It's a great thing. You've got independence, you've got freedom. You can generally make more money than working for somebody else, but it's also flexible. You know, women who want to pick up their children from school, and dads who want to go and go to a kids' assembly or a sporting event in the afternoon. I mean, that kind of flexibility is wonderful. And the ability to grow without limit, and the fact that nobody can ever fire you. I mean, there's many things. But having said that, it can be pretty scary. You haven't got this regular salary coming in. So your actual income depends day to day on what you actually do. And if something goes wrong, it can be very discouraging. So one of the things we learned fairly early is that one of the crucial things that we offer is community, particularly in the sense of contact with the franchisor. We ask not only that the franchisor be available to the franchisee, but they should ring them regularly, ideally weekly, at least monthly, and also run regular meetings. And we've figured out that about every 6 weeks is ideal. So to keep people together, be part of things. It's something I often ask people, you see, what is the number one danger facing our franchisees? And I'm bearing in mind that they work with heights, you know, going up tall trees, they work with chainsaws, they work with powerful equipment, there's motor accidents because they drive a lot. What is the number one danger that faces our franchisees? There's one above everything else, many, many times more than everything put together: suicide.
Wow.
Yeah. Far more dangerous than chainsaws and heights and anything is suicide. And it happens, and it's awful. It happens regularly. So we are enormously aware of this kind of issue, and we do all kinds of things to try and alleviate it. But helping people to be communicating with each other is the main thing.
Business can be very stressful, and I know we have a lot of listeners of the podcast who do run their own trade businesses, and it is known as well that the construction industry really struggles with a very high number of suicide amongst men as well. What are the practical things you do as a leader to support your franchisees with their mental health and stress, and obviously having those pathways to seek support and guidance if they are having a hard time?
Well, we keep in touch with them regularly. Our franchisees, we have a system of surveys. We survey our customers, which is enormously helpful in terms of, we also survey our franchisees. And so anonymously every year we send them a survey. I mean, it's anonymous from the point of view of the franchisor doesn't know, and asks them about the support they get, how often they're called, how often they get back to them, how helpful are they, you know, how they, is their income good, satisfactory, for those kinds of things. It's a brief questionnaire. And we use that to feedback and then look at who's doing a good job. So we want, the key thing is the franchisor providing support and the meetings. Now, on top of that, we do different kinds of things. Like, for example, we have all of our franchisors through mental health training, including myself. So you know what to look for. We're not psychiatrists or psychologists, but we need to know how to react. We give everybody a fridge magnet with all the emergency numbers on, particularly from a mental health point of view. We provide free psychological counselling, no cost. They can just ring up and they can ask anything they like and have a trained psychologist on the phone. We have franchisee mentors who volunteer their time and their efforts just to be available. So you have a range of things like that. I love us to do more, but every course, that every passion that we have, everything we support is always to do with mental health, particularly men's mental health, because men are particularly vulnerable. So we support things like men's sheds, for example, or Beyond Blue, those kinds of causes, because we're just aware of the problem. And there's so much loneliness out there, and it's getting so much worse. Actually, it really is. People are they're far less connected to community than they used to be. And it's been a steady downward spiral since the 1950s. My whole life, it's getting worse. And you get deaths of despair, which is suicide, drug overdose, alcohol problems. It's just getting worse and worse all the time. And urgently we need to do everything we can to bring back that sense of connection and community. A lot of problems with things like mobile phones and social media too is causing an epidemic of loneliness. I mean, these are really dangerous technologies.
And being a business owner can be quite an isolating experience as well, especially if you haven't leaned into any sort of peer network or any community while you are navigating the challenges of running a business. For the listeners who are business owners, what would be your top 3 tips for how they can set up a successful trade business that is service-based and very much about providing a service to people?
Okay, look, number one is to be endlessly self-critical. You look at yourself and say, what can I do different? What can I do better? That's a question I ask myself every day of my life, not just working days, but every single day. Looking at what's happened, what's gone wrong, what can I do? People have a tendency to blame the outside world. They blame the economy, the clients, the competitors, the suppliers. They just blame somebody else. And the people who are successful are the ones that look internally. Now, we do have problems with other people, of course, but we can't affect them. What we can do is affect ourselves. In the early days at Jim's, we were in a strip shopping centre. We had a little room in a strip shopping centre, and we just grew. Actually, we grew from one room as we expanded. But the anchor tenant was a milk bar, and I used to go in there quite a lot because I just, lived within walking distance, and we were always there. And this guy was always complaining about business, and he blamed everybody else. He would say, "Oh, the big shopping centres and stuff and supermarkets, they're unfair competition, and your staff don't come and buy lunches from us." And I didn't say much, but I said to him once, "Look, your people come down here to get lunch, and you don't want to open lettuce for them." And he said, "Well, I can't afford to do that because it's just wasted if they don't eat it." And I said, "Why don't you go and ask them for their lunch orders?" "Oh, no, I can't do that," sort of thing. And then you go in there and you'd want to buy your lunch, your milk or whatever, and he'd be chatting with one of his mates and he'd ignore you for a couple of 2 or 3 minutes while he was having a conversation with somebody, one of his friends. And, you could see this guy who was complaining, but he just wasn't looking at himself at all. And milk bar's a pretty difficult business. It's not exactly a high earner, but all the same. But you see that a lot. And I see that with franchisees. Look, we divide franchisees into 3 categories, basically. We call them gold, bronze, lead. Gold is the kind of person that is somebody who is self-critical, somebody who looks at themselves and says, how can I improve every day? And they're the ones that go in and build $1 million businesses. We've got a lot of those. Not enough, but we've got a lot of them. And then you have what we call bronze. And this is somebody who isn't necessarily very sparky, but they'll listen. So if they've got a problem and you say, well, okay, you need to do this, you need to ring that clients quicker, or, ask this kind of question or do this kind of thing, and they'll listen to you. And then you've got your leads, and the leads are the ones, they're not necessarily stupid, but they're stubborn. They just simply, whenever you suggest something to them, they'll say, oh, no, that won't work for me because of so and so and so and so. And you're wrong and I'm right. And you've got to give me more leads. I don't need to do this because your job is to give me more leads. And it's your fault if I don't do well. And those people tend to fail, or at least they're very disgruntled. So it's that overall attitude. That's the first thing. Endlessly self-critical, look at yourself, be humble enough to say, I've made a mistake. What did I do wrong? Let me do better. Second thing to me, you've got to have an absolute passion for customers. You've got to be customer focused. You've got to think all the time, the people that are dealing with me are, they're the ones that I need to understand. I need to live in their shoes. I need to know. And this is why, in a sense, when I talk to franchisees all the time, it's so helpful because I know what's going wrong. What are we not doing? What could we do better? Are we not training? Are we not coaching? Is their software not right? What do we need to do? What do we need to say? How do I need to approach them when they come to me? What's the best way I can respond? So that's a really crucial customer focus. And to me, it's got to be an emotional thing. It can't just be, hey, if I give good service, then I'll do well. It's got to be emotional. And I think the other thing I'd say is look after your own physical and mental health. And that's enormously important. And that means giving priority to things that matter, like family, like community, like physical health. If you're not actually working physically, you need to stay fit and control your diet and don't get involved in things like, nasty drugs and alcohol and all this kind of stuff too. Look after yourself and look after your relationships and your family and be part of a community even beyond work. Mental and physical health is crucial, because if that's not right, nothing's going to work. And it's a danger that people face. We see it again and again. Failure comes not because there's anything fundamentally wrong with their business. It's because they get depressed, they get down, they can't cope, they get anxious. And there's clues to this actually. Even mental health is a process. It's not a matter of taking a pill. It's a matter of looking at things like exercise, fresh air, contact with nature, community, sense of purpose, sense of meaning, family, those kinds of things too. Which actually I have to say that something like a lawn mowing business is a fantastically good business or a fencing business, because you're actually out there in the open air, enjoying the sunshine or the rain as it may be, getting physical exercise. I mean, it hits a lot of the targets, which is why actually when you look at surveys of happiness, people would think that, being a banker or a lawyer must be pretty good and being a gardener pretty ordinary, but actual fact, they show it the other way around. Gardeners tend to actually rate very well and bankers and lawyers do rather badly.
I've experienced that myself because I struggled a lot with my mental health at the end of my apprenticeship because I didn't know how to manage my stress very well as a young person, and it burnt me out in a very high pressure environment. And it's a chat I now have with many apprentices that we can be lucky to have such hands-on roles in the trade, because it really forces us to be mindful, because you've got to think about what you're doing with your hands so you don't cut yourself or whack your finger with a hammer. And that does actually sometimes create space between whatever mental load might be distracting us and bringing us down. And so it's I like that you bring that comparison, that obviously being outside and hands-on can actually be a positive impact on our mental health. And I also liked the 3 tips you shared, because while they were for business owners in that business context, it applies to anyone at any stage of their career, because what you really said was tip 1 was about taking total responsibility for your life and what you can control. Tip 2 was about servicing your customers. And if that is an apprentice in a workshop, those customers might be their workmates or their managers, and how they manage those relationships. And obviously the 3rd tip was really about looking after your well-being, because life can be hard, but we can do things that can support our well-being so that we can be well and we can navigate those challenges and those mistakes. Can you share a leadership mistake you've made and what you've learned from it?
I don't make leadership mistakes. The hardest thing is to find good people, and they make a lot of bad decisions in that way. It's very difficult. I do find, as a general point, that looking for people within your organisation tends to work better than getting outsiders. We have a much higher success rate. None of my best people are actually people who come from the most entry-level jobs, like the call centre, or somebody just pulling around files in the office, or that real basic. And you look for those, and you look for the ones that have got that level of initiative and have got ideas. And I try and get to know my staff to some extent. We had one young bloke, Joel, that you probably had contact with through this thing. Now, he came in the most early 20s, no qualifications or much experience. Most basic job you can imagine, just doing menial work around the office. But he kind of had a good attitude, and he worked for a while helping with our insurance thing. And I used to go in and chat to him, and he'd have ideas about things. He'd say, what about the way your website works, and this and this and this? He's now one of my top managers, and he's much responsible, probably more than me, for the recent growth of an organization, which has shot up in recent years, because he's an amazing, completely self-taught guy, great attitude. So look from within is a very powerful thing. And often I've taken people from the outside and they just sound good, but they don't fit the culture, and they make terrible mistakes. The worst mistake I tend to make, though, ongoing, is that I have a habit of, I don't know whether you call this leadership, but I tend to jump into things I don't necessarily know very well. And people look at me and they say, hey, you've been successful in business. But what they don't understand is actually I've mostly failed. About 95% of the businesses I've tried, I've failed at. Like, for example, just to put a list of them, I tried a computer shop in the early days. I tried a holiday resort, a mower repair shop, a trade exchanges more than once, factory to build trailers, and a psychology institute. Didn't fail, but it cost me a lot of money that I didn't get back. I could go on. There's so many things that I've tried to do when I've gone outside my sphere of expertise, such as it is. So whether you call that leadership or not, I don't know, but I certainly lead the company down the wrong paths at times.
Well, I definitely think that sometimes we don't get very good visibility of the people we look up to, whether that's in the industry or in the workplace, about the mistakes they've made and how they've learned from them and tried again. So it's actually really insightful to know that, you know, you very much had to explore a few different things, and statistically we're going to fail more often than we succeed, but obviously we learn from those failures so we can continue to grow and improve. We don't have to let those failures define us so that we give up and don't progress.
No. You've got to be resilient, and that's one thing I do have. I have very great life, great support, great health, great family, amazing wife, great kids, and great co-workers too, and great franchisees. There's a lot of good people around. You just can't get discouraged. We see that again and again. People fail because they're discouraged more than because there's any physical obstacle around, which again is where community and support comes in.
You're obviously very passionate about social change. What inspired your research, and does it really show up in how you show up as a leader and how you show up and interact with other people?
Probably not really, I'm afraid to say. Research is at least in my early days, is a very solitary sort of thing. You have to be a very geeky, nerdy type to spend 10 years trying to work out why civilizations rise and fall, reading thousands of books and keeping notes and just all that sort of stuff. Look, I think the only thing that is in common between my research and my business is that I am extremely unorthodox in my thinking. You know, somebody would tell me there's 2 standard ways of doing something. I say, well, here's 3 more. I mean, I'm just like that, wildly, which is why what killed my academic career. There was never any prospect of it. But I don't see a lot of overlap apart from that. But my business is designed to fund my research. I never had any desire to be in business or become rich or anything like that until I realized I needed to be able to fund the research. And, you know, I can now afford to spend several $1 million a year on basic neuroscience and epigenetics and all kinds of fascinating things. We're getting some great results. But that's really all the money is for. I don't need a lot to live. I'm notorious for being incredibly stingy. My socks have usually got holes in them and this kind of thing. So I don't live the lifestyle of the rich and famous.
What I see, and this might be from the outside because I don't have a deep understanding of the nature of your research, is that there is that common interest in people and society and community, and that does extend across your values as how you operate a business and also then the kind of information that you are researching. I did see online you have a new book coming out this year, No Other Success. Can you share what that book is about?
It's my business story about how I did it fundamentally, but it's also it's got a lot of stories about how other people have succeeded and what they're after and what success actually means. For example, no other success is a shortage for the saying no other success can compensate for failure in the home. And the first starting of the book, the first anecdote is of a guy. I spoke to him. I was ringing him on my 10-year anniversary because I ring franchisees on their big anniversaries. And I asked him what he'd been doing and how he said, I was the manager in a supermarket. And I said, what caused the change? And he said, well, it was because one morning I got up, and he said, I worked very long hours, morning till night. And I got up and he was about to leave, and his little son, who was 4 years old at the time, said to him, Daddy, I wish you could have breakfast with us. And he said he drove to work, his tears streaming down his face, and he quit his job and bought a lawn mowing franchise. And ever since then, he's been able to have breakfast with his son, and he's seen his son grow up, and his son's now 14 years old. And I said, do you ever thank him for that comment? And he said, every day. It's transformed his life. Now, his income, I have to say, is about the same as he was making as a manager, but his lifestyle is amazing. So there's stories like that. And people have a very wrong idea of success, I think. I mean, to me, I've got 10 children, and I love them dearly, and I want them to be successful. But let me tell you, the top thing I would say to them is, are they good people? Are they good parents? Are they good family members? That's number one. You've got to be able to make a living, yes, but becoming wealthy and successful, and, you know, some of them are going to do pretty well or have done pretty well. But that's not the main thing. Are they good parents? Are they good people? Are they good members of the community? To me, that is what success is about. So this book is very much on that. And I often think it's ironic, you know, because, I mean, honestly, Ashley, if I was a gardening contractor and I was struggling to make a living, you wouldn't be talking to me, would you? Because I wouldn't be that interesting. You're talking to me because I'm supposedly rich and famous and all the rest of it. I'm a lot more famous than I'm rich, I can assure you. We don't make as much money as you think. But the fact of the matter is, my message is that it's not really the most important thing. And people waste their lives. They're out there trying to amass wealth and having a better car and a bigger house and better holidays and more flash clothes and whatever else you do with a lot of money. And it doesn't bring much happiness or satisfaction. It really doesn't. You know, the number one thing they've discovered, this is social scientists, so I read a lot of this kind of stuff. I'm a great reader, is that if you really want to use your money to make you happy, give it away. Give it away to a cause that you're involved with. This is the number one, the scientists, psychologists, the number one way to use money to make you happy is to give it away.
That's really great to hear, obviously, how important family is for you. And what I do think on this podcast, I am very lucky that because we talk about leadership and we talk about the fact that being an everyday leader isn't about your title. It isn't about how many years you've been in an industry. It's really about how you show up as a person in alignment with your values, take responsibility for your life, you know, cultivate that mindset to show up for other people and have a positive impact on the people around you. That I have been fortunate to talk to people at a range of levels. And it's great to see an example of someone who is so high in the traditional business hierarchy with your role as CEO to still carry those very humble values about how to be a good leader and how to be a good person, obviously through business and through your family.
I think the point is really, really valuable that you made, that leadership comes at any level of the organization and of life. Leadership is not just being a CEO or being a manager. Leadership is actually taking initiative within your own sphere of influence when you don't even have the role, but take initiative to do things that are better and to look after customers and so forth. And let's not forget too, there's one leadership role which most of us have, which is the most important of all, and that's your leadership role as a parent. What you're like as a parent, because that is a leadership role. And to me, being a business leader and being a parent is very, very similar. It's a very similar job, because in both cases, you really want to help somebody to be the best they can possibly be. That's the essence of leadership and the essence of parenting, which means that you care deeply about what they want, but it means you're also going to be tough enough to tell them when they're not doing the right thing. Now, whether you're a boss helping a subordinate to understand how they can do their job better, or you're a parent telling their kids why they need to help with the washing up and not go off and play computer games. All right, leadership is everywhere. We all should be leaders. Sorry, anyway, I interrupted you. Well, what was your question?
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. The final question I ask all the guests, Jim, is what is your advice to tradies about how they can show up as that everyday leader, whatever stage they're at in their career or life?
It's basically caring about what you do. It honestly is. It's seeing your job as a sense of mission and of purpose and some value to it. It's like during COVID in Victoria, we were shut down. We couldn't do any work for 2 months. Now, most people had some government support, but you know what really upset people more than anything else is that lack of a sense of purpose. Because when we're out there looking after somebody, mowing their lawns, for example, I mean, first of all, you take pride in doing it well. people used to say to me things like, I never knew my lawn could look this good. So you take pride in that. But also you're a social contact too. You have contact. Often elderly people don't have any contact all week, except when you come and do some service for them. So you have an incredibly important role. So I think a sense of mission, and I just hate the way that society looks upon anybody who works manually as being somehow less. What we do is so valuable, so important, so essential. And we're the linchpins of society. We need to understand that what we do matters. And that matters in every frame of life. You look at somebody who's a cleaner in a hospital, for example. I mean, there are people who find that a pretty degrading, ordinary job. And there's others that have a real sense of mission because they're helping people to become healthy, and they're doing something good for mankind. And that sense of meaning and purpose is so important. And life should have purpose. If we're just living a life to say, how can I feel good from minute to minute or day to day, and it doesn't work very well. But if we're out there saying, what can I do that makes a difference? I have pride. I can actually do my job. I'm a mechanic, and I can do my job really well and efficiently, and I can give people really good functioning vehicles that will help them to live their lives. And that means something. And then when you see the light in somebody's face because you've done something that's helped them, like when a franchisee says to me, you've really helped me to succeed. That's wonderful. It's a great feeling. But I think very much in the trades, we've got to have the sense that we matter, that our jobs are important, that have real dignity.
It's very clear from everything you've shared that you have very strong alignment with your values. And the one thing that I've taken away from this chat is very much that having that sense of understanding our own values and our own purpose can help us in business, can help us in life, but it also helps us as leaders as well. So thank you for everything you've shared on the podcast today, Jim. I've definitely learned a lot from all your stories and all your leadership insight. So it's been an absolute pleasure listening to everything you've had to share.
Thanks, Ashley. Good to talk to you.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode as we wrap up season 1 of Tradies Who Lead. If you enjoyed this chat, please like and subscribe to Tradies Who Lead, share it with a friend, and follow us on social media to see more of your favorite guests. We're grateful to all our listeners for joining us on this leadership journey, and we'll be back in 2026 for season 2 with more everyday leadership legends. Till then, take care, and we'll see you in the new year.